It is without a doubt that I have covered some really crazy and insane evil deeds that men have done on this series. For instance, Timothy McVeigh's wrath upon the US government, Jim Jones attempting to create a socialist paradise but end up making a concentration camp in the middle of the South American jungle, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold attempting to do Oklahoma City Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, as well as the horrific murders of both Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy Jr. But to a lot of people, they would say that the worst evil that a human being would ever become would be that of being a Nazi. And I get it. I mean, we are told until people are black and blue on how absolutely atrocious and evil the Third Reich was. But there was one Nazi out of all of them who was so vile, so cruel, so sadistic, that the stuff he did made even the high-ranking officials of the SS cringe the hell on over. The Butcher of Warsaw, Oskar Dirlewanger.
We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be.
What, you thought I was gonna do Joseph Mengele? Nope! Hey everybody, this is Atticus the Death Metaler, and welcome to another episode of the Death Metal Historian, aka the bootleg version of Absolute Mad Lads. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about one of, if not the most vile piece of shit human beings I have ever had the displeasure of making a video, Oskar Dirlewanger. Now, the reason why I want to make this video because there was a lot of people that are gonna say like, oh, maybe you should do a video on Joseph Mengele. Well, why would I make a video on Joseph Mengele? Which, yeah, Joseph Mengele was, if not one of the most evil Nazis ever, not including him, but I decided to do Oskar Dirlewanger because his tale is just some of the most fucked up shit that I had to unfortunately do research on. Even after finishing this script right here, I was just mentally exhausted after just reading all the fucked up shit that he did. So there's that. And plus, I mean, everybody's made videos on Joseph Mengele, and of course, I was going to be one of many people that would make a generic Joseph Mengele video. And why not just make a video on this absolute degenerate? So, guys, get ready. Strap in your seatbelts. We're going to enter a world of absolute degeneracy and depravity. Oh, my fucking God. Let us begin. Oskar Paul Dirlewanger was born on September 26, 1865 in Würzburg, Bavaria, what was then the German Empire. Unfortunately, we do not have a lot of information on his upbringing, who his mother and father was, if he had any siblings, what was his favorite food, what was his favorite pastime, how many friends did he have, was he abused. We do not have any information on his entire early life, but what we do know about the young Dirlewanger was at the ripe young age of 18, he enlisted in the army in 1913. A year later, in June 28, 1914, a cheeky Bosnian Serb named Gavrilo Princip attempted to try and be in the Serb version of Jackass by yeeting the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. Yep. World War I began. Dirlewanger first saw action where he was with the Royal Württemberg Corps, taking part in the invasion of Belgium. He later fought filthy in France. He received the Iron Cross, first and second class, having been wounded 6 times. He finished the war ranking as a lieutenant. There, he was in charge of a company in the Eastern Front in southern Russia and Romania. At the cessation of hostilities, the German units under Dirlewanger's area were ordered to be interned in Romania. But Dirlewanger said, "Fuck the seat! I'm going home! Who's with me?" There, he led 600 men from his and other units back to Germany. Now, we all know the absolute horrors of World War I. trench warfare, living in squalor, shell shock, artillery barrages, machine gun fire, barbed wire, mustard gas, and the fear of going into no man's land, knowing you would never make it to the other side. The war changed people, including Dirlewanger. According to German biographer Nathraakh, the war was a contributing factor that determined Dirlewanger's later life, and his terror warfare methods, and his immoral personality with his alcoholism and his sadistic sexual orientation was additionally shattered by front experiences of the First World War and its frenzied violence and barbarism.
Earthman, what a shithole.
Now, in this time period, the German Empire was no more after World War I. The empire collapsed, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, and the German Empire was renamed the Weimar Republic. Post-World War I Weimar Republic, it was an absolute fucking mess. With reparations sent over to the Allies, this caused massive political instability. An instability where a well-known ideology was growing not just in the Weimar Republic, but various European nations. And it was called communism.
Commie! Commie!
God damn it, wait, Shades, what the fuck are you doing here? So yes, communist uprisings were springing up across Europe after the Bolsheviks took over the Russian Empire. They sought to join their Russian comrades to unite the workers, but there were those who opposed. Those being the Freikorps. The Freikorps were paramilitary units made up of soldiers of the former empire who were pro-monarchy, anti-Treaty of Versailles, and most importantly, anti-commie. Dirlewanger was in one of those Freikorps units. There he fought off communist strongholds in Ruhr, Saxony, and also Polish nationalists in Upper Silesia. There's gonna be a reoccurring theme on Dirlewanger and Polish people as we later go down on this video. Just be ready on that. On Easter Sunday, 1921, Dirlewanger led an armored train towards Sagenhausen, which was occupied by militias of the German Communist Party under Max Holz. You'll be surprised that he failed. But eventually the town was taken over by pro-government troops. Dirlewanger described in a police report as mentally unstable, violent, fanatic, and alcoholic, who had the habit of erupting into violence under the influence of drugs. Gee, I wonder why! Despite his growing red flag behavior, he studied in the Goethe University Frankfurt and obtained a doctorate in political science. The following year, he joined a little-known party that was gaining a ton of momentum in the Weimar Republic. They were known as the National Socialist German Workers' Party. The Nazis. Auf der Heide blüht ein kleines Blümelein. Und das heißt Erika. Being part of the infamous Brown Shirts. Around the 1930s, the Third Reich was gaining a huge stronghold under their charismatic leader, Adolf Hitler.
Und wir werden in unserem Zeichen wieder siegen!
Dirlewanger was repeatedly convicted for illegal arms possession and embezzlement, but the worst thing that he ever was convicted of at the time was the rape of a 14-year-old girl from the League of German Girls. He was sentenced to 2 years, which, why? Fucking why? Dirlewanger was stripped of his doctorate and his medals he received in the war. Now, you would think that he would be locked up and then live out the rest of his days as a disgraced and shunned man, right? Wrong! Turns out, Dirlewanger had friends. Very, very, very powerful friends. Dirlewanger had friends who were high-ranking Nazi officials, one of them being Gottlob Berger. Berger was a chief of the main office to the Waffen-SS. The SS were the high-ranking members of the Nazi party at the time, and Berger was in a very high position. He was even friends with the leader of the SS itself, Heinrich Himmler. Next to Hitler, Himmler was one of the most evil Nazis of the Third Reich. Berger put in a good word for Himmler on Dirlewanger's behalf, and lo and behold, Dirlewanger was released and reinstated in the SS. Dirlewanger next went to Spain to partake in the Spanish Civil War, being part of the Condor Legion, German volunteers fighting on behalf of Franco's nationalists. There he fought dirty from 1936 till 1939. After that, he was again reinstated in the Nazi Party and his doctorate restored by the University of Frankfurt. So it happened. A man that had survived the horrors of World War I, fought off communist uprisings, was decorated and had a doctorate, but with his alcoholism and growing sexual sadism to little girls, had all stripped away, locked up, only to be granted freedom by very, very powerful people. And those people would use this disgusting beast when a fateful day happened.
This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
World War II. Electric Boogaloo had begun. At the outbreak of World War II, Dirlewanger volunteered for the Waffen-SS, where he was given the role as Obersturmführer. There he would lead a brigade of men that set terror and horror down innocent people. And this formation was known as the Dirlewanger Brigade. Before they became a huge ragtag brigade of absolute degenerates, they were mostly made up of Waffen-SS and pardoned poachers. They saw the poachers as useful for their methods of tracking down and snuffing out partisans. But soon, the brigade was made up of some of the worst of Nazi German society. And I'm not just talking about Nazis. I'm just talking about the fact that the brigade had such people, criminals, in their ranks, such as arsonists, murderers, rapists, child molesters. They were all made up in the brigades under Dirlewanger. Later, the brigade would consist of Ukrainian concepts. Basically, at this point, like, Dirlewanger wouldn't even sweat having a guy like Albert Fish amongst his ranks. That's how fucking degenerate the brigade was. The brigade's original task was to snuff out any partisan resistance in the Eastern Front, making way for the Nazis' plan of Lebenskampf. Basically like with what we did to the natives, but it's like the Germans doing that to the Slavs. But the stuff they did, oh my god, the stuff that they did. Much like that of General Butt Naked having his naked child soldiers smacked out of their minds on heroin, Dirlewanger would have his men get shit-faced on alcohol before going in and doing whatever their hearts desired. Dirlewanger would shoot those who did not meet his quotas with a bullet to the hand. If they were keeping stolen goods or stole from him, they were all given a bullet to the head. So when I said that he encouraged men to fulfill their heart's desires, I mean he made his men fulfill their absolute heart's desire. They would find little Jewish girls, strip them down naked, and no, I'll spare you the details. And after they were done with her, they would inject strychnine inside of her and laugh their asses off as they watched that poor helpless girl violently convulse to her death. These people aren't animals. They're fucking demons. They even sent out packs of German shepherds to watch the victims have their throats ripped out for their amusement. Rape was just the norm for the brigade, as it was often even encouraged. And after they were done, they were hanged, as well as gutted by the men's bayonets. The atrocities were so brutal, so cruel, and so disgusting, even Himmler himself was disgusted. You know that you're a special kind of fucked up when even the head of the SS thinks that you're taking things way too fucking far. And yes, it was allowed. Why? Well, fucking Gottlob Berger, of course. He often covered his ass. Himmler was quoted saying, "Better to kill too many than too few Poles." Dirlewanger was basically an untouchable, and was even promoted to command a battalion What in the absolute motherfuck? Now, when we think of the Holocaust, we think of the infamous death camps or concentration camps that all laid out in Europe. The most infamous ones being Auschwitz and Treblinka in Poland. But the Holocaust actually started shedding blood around the Eastern Front. At the height of Operation Barbarossa, there were special units called Einsatzgruppen. There they were tasked in rounding up not just the Jews, but other undesirables such as gypsies, Slavs, communists, you name it, and make them all bite the bullet. Dirlewanger was sent over to Belarus in 1942 for anti-gang operations. There, Dirlewanger's cruelty soared even further. Village by village, he would have a method for him and his men. He rounded up the entire population, sent them to either a church or barn, and, well, this was the result. Can I even go further? Can I go further? Like, I'm already discussed it, and we're not even at the very fucked up portions of this video. The soldiers would round up civilians who would be used as meat shields, marching towards minefields. And of course, the occasional raping and torturing of women and young girls. It was estimated that they killed at least 30,000 Belarusians. Hitler was well informed on the scope of the evil bastard, and gave him the Golden Cross on December 5th, 1943, where he was reported to have killed over 14,000 alleged partisans. In mid-1944, under Operation Bagatron, despite being a huge terror among helpless civilians, the brigade were no match for the onflux of the Reds pushing the Third Reich's back. It was then hastily rebuilt and reformed into a storm brigade and stationed back in Poland. But on August 1st, 1944, the Warsaw Uprising commenced. There, this is where the most infamous crimes under the Dirlewanger Brigade were committed. So I know that when most people think of the Warsaw Uprising, they always think of that one song by Sabaton.
Warsaw, city at war, voices from underground, whispers of freedom, 1944, help that never came.
But in the case of Dirlewanger and his very merry men of drunken psychos, they were shown no mercy. Historian Martin Windrow wrote that in the summer of 1944, Dirlewanger led his butchers, rapists, and looters into action against the Warsaw Uprising and quickly committed unspeakable crimes. In Warsaw, Dirlewanger participated in the Wola massacre, together with police units running up and shooting some 40,000 civilians, most of them in just 2 days. But the most terrifying and sickening tales of the Dirlewanger Brigade's war crimes were best told by Matthias Schneck, who is an assault engineer for the Wehrmacht at the tender young age of 18. Just imagine being 18 and under the control of Dirlewanger, and you see just the absolute horrific evils that Dirlewanger and his men did at 18 years old. All that shit etched in your fucking brain. So here I have this paper that I written down most of all the stuff that Matthias Schneck talked about. So I'm gonna read it all. So guys, get ready. After a few days of fighting, we were assigned to Dirlewanger. 3 Sturmpioneer for each SS platoon. Our job was to make way for SS men, blow up obstacles and doors. We were jumping into houses and chasing out people. We were Velt's people, but during the fight we were under Dirlewanger's command. They were looking like bums, dirty and shredded uniforms. Not all of them had weapons. They were taking them from the dead. Every morning they were getting vodka. We, the Sturmpioneer, did too. We were drinking on an empty stomach. Before attacking, one does not eat. If you get shot on an empty stomach, you may survive. If you are shot in a full stomach, you die in pain. Good to know. I was setting explosives under big doors somewhere in Old Town. From inside we heard, "Netrieben! Netrieben!" meaning don't shoot. The doors opened and a nurse appeared with a tiny white flag. We went inside with fixed bayonets, a huge hall with beds and mattresses on the floor. Wounded were everywhere. Besides Poles, there were also wounded Germans. They begged the SS men not to kill the Poles. A Polish officer, a doctor, and 15 Polish Red Cross nurses surrendered to the military hospital to us. The Dirlewangers were following us. I hid one of the nurses behind the doors and managed to lock them. I heard after the war that she had survived, which, honestly, I'm glad she survived. The SS men killed all the wounded. They were breaking their heads with rifle butts. The wounded Germans were screaming and crying in despair. After that, the Dirlewangers ran after the nurses. They were ripping clothes off them. We were driven out for guard duty. We heard women screaming. Jesus fucking Christ, man. The nurses from the hospital were rushed through the square, naked with their hands on their heads. Blood ran down their legs. Gee, I wonder fucking why. The doctor was dragged behind them with a noose around his neck. He wore a rag, red maybe from blood, and a thorn crown on top of the head. All were led to the gallows where a few bodies were hanging already. When they were hanging on one of the nurses, Dirlewanger kicked the bricks as she was standing on. I couldn't watch that anymore. We ran to our quarters, but before we reached them, we saw Kaminsky's Cossacks rushing with civilians. We call those Cossacks Kiwis from the his village, volunteers willing to help. Next to them, a Polish pregnant woman fell down. One of the Kiwis turned back and whipped her. She tried to escape on the knees, but they killed her, running her over with horses. We gotta keep going on. I screamed in my sleep. Then my companions woke me up with cold water saying, "Bubi, du hast den Warschaukoller," meaning, Bubi, you have the Warsaw madness. Every time when we stormed the cellars and women were inside, the Dirlewanger soldiers raped them. Many a times, a group raped the same woman quickly, still holding weapons in their hands. And after one of the fights, I was standing shaking by the wall and couldn't calm my nerves. Dirlewanger soldiers burst in. One of them took a woman. She was pretty. She wasn't screaming. Then he was raping her, pushing her head strong against the table, holding a bayonet on the other hand. First he cut open her blouse, then one cut from stomach to throat. Blood gushed. Do you know how fast blood congeals in August? There was also that small child in Dirlewanger's hands. He took it from a woman who was standing in the crowd in the street. He lifted the child high and then threw it into the fire. Then he shot the mother. Our mascot was a crippled boy, also 12 years old. He lost one leg, but could jump very fast on the other one. He was very proud of that. He always jumped around the soldiers back and forth. We said it was for luck. He helped a little. One day the SS men called him. He jumped to them willingly. They were laughing and asked him to jump to the trees. From far I saw that they put 2 grenades into his bag. He didn't notice. He was jumping and they laughed at him, shouting, "Schalnir! Schalnir!" The boy blew up. Suffer the children, they say. We were storming some building. I ran through a field. A wounded soldier lay on the ground. I gave him some water from my canteen. Then ran forward to blow some doors. The SS was moving behind us. When I ran back, Dirlewanger stopped me. He pointed to the wounded soldier. "You give water to this pig!" Only then did I notice that on a German uniform, the wounded had a dirty white-red armband, a symbol of the Polish Home Army. "Shoot him, you dirty swine!" Dirlewanger handed me his pistol. I stood motionless. Sick of all that, Dirlewanger was so furious that I couldn't understand what he was shouting at. The Pole looked at me. I will never forget his eyes. In Warsaw, I learned to recognize if a wounded would survive the next 10 minutes or grab a couple hours. When one sees so many people dying, you just know how long they will live. One of the Dirlewanger SS men grabbed the gun from me and shot the Pole. So, I could go on, but I mean, I was already mentally drained, reading all this shit and putting it on this paper, but this is just one of many things that Matthias unfortunately saw. God damn. In recognition of his work to crush the uprising and intimidate the population of the city, Dirlewanger receives his final promotion to the rank of SS Oberführer. Dirlewanger then led his men in joining the efforts to put down the Slovak national uprising in October 1944. And yeah, of course, they crushed him. Like, what did you think they were gonna fucking do? Like, he obviously, murdered and raped all the Slovaks. Eventually being posted on the front lines of Hungary and Eastern Germany to fight against the advancing Red Army. In February 1945, the unit was expanded again and redesignated as an SS Grenadier Division. That same month, Dirlewanger was shot in the chest while fighting against the Soviet forces near Guben in Brandenburg and sent to the rear. It was his 12th and final injury in the war. On April 22nd, he went into hiding. And as he went to hiding, the Dirlewanger Brigade either disbanded or got killed or captured. But basically, they disbanded. Dirlewanger was arrested on June 1st, 1945 in the town of Altshausen in Upper Swabia by the French occupation zone. Authorities, while he was wearing civilian clothes, using a false name, and hiding in a remote hunting lodge. He was recognized by a Jewish former concentration camp inmates and brought to a detention center. He reportedly died around June 5th or 7th, 1945 in a prison camp at Altshausen. He was 49 years old. He died probably as a result of ill treatment. Or the fact that his Polish guard said, "Fuck it," and proceeded to beat 19 different shades of ever-loving shit out of Dirlewanger. And by God, I hope it is true that those guards beat the shit out of him, because that was a well-deserved death for this absolute degenerate.
You get what you fucking deserve!
Oskar Dirlewanger is by far, in my opinion, one of the most evil men I have had the very displeasure of making a video on. He was essentially a rabid, emaciated demon with mange disease, released by the Nazis to fulfill Hitler's warped views of a pure Aryan Europe, and those who face his cruelty would be their last. And oh boy, did he want to end your life in the worst ways possible. His legacy is a dark, twisted, and sickening one. In July 9th, 1987, Elim Kilmov would release his magnum opus film, Come and See. The film was largely based on the mass atrocities done by the Dirlewanger Brigade, and I would consider it dubbed the Soviet Full Metal Jacket, as well as one of the greatest films I have ever seen. And that's saying something. And if you want to watch it, it is absolutely free on YouTube, and the link to the film is down on the description below. It is quite ironic that there are alt-right groups that practically worship Dirlewanger, using his brigade's insignia as merch, knowing or just being coy that a majority of his soldiers were the very degenerates that they claimed to hate. Now, I know I said this on my Caligula video, but I also really need to say this on this video. Again, we must always hold our leaders and the state absolutely accountable for their actions. In the case of this, like, high-ranking Nazi officials knew of the atrocities that Dirlewanger was doing, and even Nazi officers gave their complaints to the high-ranking SS. But they didn't do shit. I mean, yeah, well, the Nazis were absolutely doing atrocious shit. But even they were disgusted by the Dirlewanger Brigade's atrocities. But, again, they saw them as useful because they showed in the results and they were putting in work. But, yeah, absolutely, we must always hold the state and our leaders accountable. Because if we don't, you're gonna have our leaders having people like Oskar Dirlewanger doing mass atrocities, bursting in your doors, stabbing your dog, raping, your daughters, your sisters, your wives, girlfriends, all that stuff. Like, they would do all that. So it is important that we always hold the state accountable. Because if we don't, they're gonna have people like Dirlewanger calling the shots. Out of all the people I've covered on the series, Oskar Dirlewanger would have had people like Dahmer and Gacy up on his ranks to fulfill their sadistic and depraved fantasies against helpless victims. He would have encouraged Dahmer to eat his victims. He would have encouraged Gacy to brutally rape and torture his male victims, etc., etc. The men that he had upon his ranks were literally the worst of the utter worst. Pure, unadulterated filth. And Oscar, I hope you are watching this, and I just wanted to say this to you. I hope that you are burning, absolutely burning in hell. So what are your guys' thoughts and opinions on Oskar Dirlewanger? Did you like this video? Did you dislike this video? Are you suffering from alcohol poisoning of having to listen to all the fucked up atrocities that Dirlewanger did? Do you live in Europe? Have you ever seen Come and See? Are you very familiar with the atrocities of Dirlewanger? Leave it all down on the comments below. And just like with every Death Metal Historian episode, I have a Discord server. So if you follow me on Instagram, I will show you how to get on my Discord. Make sure that you know that it's, let me know that it's you, that, you know, you watch this video, and then, you know, follow me, have some fun, give me some recommendations on the channel of the Death Metal Historian on my Discord server. So, yeah, hope to see all of you guys there. And stay tuned for more Death Metal Historian episodes in the new year. Without further ado, ladies and gents, I am Atticus the Death Metaler. Hope you like this video, subscribe to my channel, links down in the description below. Keep it metal, stay safe, stay healthy, have an excellent and blessed day, everyone. Skål.